Welcome back to the channel. Marco Collective Gamer 77 here, and today we'll be overviewing the Marvel vs. Capcom Arcade 1-Up cabinet. Here's a quick shot of the stool that is included. This is the Best Buy exclusive version, which does come up with the light-up marquee and overlay as well. The overall build quality for this arcade cabinet is very well done. Arcade 1-Up again is getting better and better in their processes. As far as putting together, this is actually one of the easier ones I've had. I had no misalignments with the holes. Everything went in very well. The only knock that I could give as far as the build quality and putting it together, on the bar stool itself, one of the holes for the actual cushion or the seat was not drilled. But other than that, everything else was really easy to put together. I had no problems. And as you can see here, the light up marquee, the LCD, by now they've really kind of got it nailed down. There is of course a light up protector as well. As you press the buttons here, you can also change the different lighting which affects the acrylic overlay. As you can see from the vinyl here, this is the Marvel side. So the Marvel characters are colored, and then the Capcom characters are in black and white. Riser in the bottom, which mirrors some of the characters from the Marvel side as well. I do wish for the risers that they would come up with something different as far as in regards to the different, like a different vinyl or a different screen for the bottom. It's kind of jarring to see, characters repeated. This cabinet does have Marvel Superheroes, XMen vs. Street Fighter, Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom, and Marvel Superheroes War of the Gems. The one-on-one or the tag team battle fighting games actually are all Wi-Fi enabled. Marvel Superheroes War of the Gems is a SNES console port, which honestly I'm not a huge fan of, but I was more of a fan of the Genesis version. Taking a little closer look at the light up marquee, it is very well done, evenly lit, no problems there. For the control deck itself, which basically of course has the overlay, the power switches, it's not a rocker, it's actually just a straight off and on switch like the other arcade 1-Up cabinets. Not dissimilar, very dissimilar to the NBA Jam one where it was more of a off on off, but it would just toggle. The volume of course is on a rocker as well, from 0 to about 15. The overlay, as you can see, is very well done. The directional portions and portions of the outlines that cover the buttons are actually on the acrylic itself, so when you do turn on the acrylic overlay, it lights up. The gate is, I believe, a square gate, not an octagon, and then the buttons are definitely clones. So both the stick, clones, and the buttons are all clones. They're not Sanwa parts. I will say, if you are used to Sanwa, I recommend switching these out. The buttons are a bit mushy, to be honest, because I really wish Arcade 1-Up had released this direct on their site with the Sanwa joystick and buttons like they did for their Marvel Superheroes. I love the way that machine controls, since it came with Sanwa stick and buttons, and you could definitely tell the difference. I had some difficulty pulling up some of the special moves, whereas with the Marvel Superheroes limited cab that Arcade 1-Up sold that had the Sanwa buttons and sticks, it was a lot smoother. So that is definitely one thing in the future that I will be updating. I'll be changing the octagonal, the gate, the stick, and the buttons. The very first game here is Marvel vs. Capcom. I'm glad to have this at home. I do actually have the PS3 version. I remember playing this game way back when on the Dreamcast, and of course in the arcade. I'll be honest, I have not played this game since since I had it on PS3 when they had the Marvel collection, and I definitely need to practice again. Honestly, for all the games in this cabinet, I really need to practice. For the latter titles, I actually haven't even played them since they were on the Saturn. There are dip switches here for all the online games. Unfortunately, for some of the games, there is no region version. Then that only affects really one of the games, and I'll mention why later. Marvel vs. Capcom moves very well. There's no slowdown. You can, of course, as I mentioned, get into the dip switches and make changes to the difficulty levels, continues, mode select, and things like that. As always, as you can see, Marvel vs. Capcom is just ablaze the screen most of the times with all the specials. It's actually a little too busy at times. It's almost a lot like Dragon Ball Z. And I do apologize again. I have not played many of these games in quite a while, so I am definitely not versed in a lot of the combos. That said, I do really enjoy the game. I'm definitely, especially once I've replaced the stick and the buttons, be moving forward with being able to at least control and feel like I'm not fighting some of the controls. Um, as because right now it's just not as responsive as I would like or as I was used to with the Marvel Superheroes Sanwa joystick and buttons. Other than that, you know, great title. Alright, next up on the roster is X-Men versus Street Fighter. And when I first saw this game in the arcades, I was blown away. The speed, tag team, again, of course, with the no loading, and especially once we were able to get it home on the Sega Saturn. Of course, I had to import this game, especially with the 4 meg RAM card and action replay key built into one. It was amazing to actually have this type of a game arcade perfect at home. It easily trounced the PlayStation version, which of course had loading and didn't have as many frames of animation, smaller characters. Even the Saturn version with the RAM card, the characters were just a tiny bit smaller. So to be able to have this really arcade perfect at home is amazing. Um, this game, is of course the progenitor of a lot of the Versus series and still a fan favorite. And honestly, if the X-Men versus Street Fighter arcade one-up actual physical cabinet didn't have so many repeat titles, I probably would have picked up that version. I did choose the Marvel's Capcom Cabinet, as honestly there's only one repeat title, which was the Marvel Superheroes. Everything else, as far as the three other versus fighting games and the console Marvel War of the Gems super console version, is not a repeat. I can't say too much about this title. Again, it's one of those games that I just have not played in a while. And as you can see, I'm really scribbing out. But I can't wait to dig in and get those skills back. And next up, we've got Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter. I did try going into the game settings to see if I could change the region code. This does seem to be the Western version, and the only reason why I bring that up is because the Japanese version actually has an extra character. His name is Norimaru. Basically looks like a Japanese otaku. It's a guest character created by Capcom and also the comedian himself, Noritake Kinashi. He basically is wearing slippers, a battle type of sash, and a purple suit with glasses. And one of his specials, he actually takes pictures, and that's how he damages the characters. I was hoping that maybe there was a region code or region switch. Unfortunately, I did not see one in settings. I'm hoping maybe Arcade 1-Up was able to get the license just to have him, arcade perfect, at least for the Japanese version. At least for right now, that's the only thing that's missing. You can't fight. It seems that you can't fight the other characters like Evil Zangief during one of my battles. Zangief actually turned evil, so that was pretty cool to see. Again, another awesome game. And then unless you had the Saturn version import, it was really did not come home, and of course it was not even released on the Marvel collection when PS3 came out. Again, good conversion, great ROM. Can't wait to play even more of this game. Alright, now with Marvel Superheroes. Now this is the copy, or I guess a repeat. I actually do have this on the Marvel Superheroes Cabinet Limited Edition from Arcade 1-Up. The one nice thing about this game, it does include Wi-Fi, so you can play this online. So that is definitely something that you can't do with the Marvel Superheroes Cab that Arcade 1-Up released last year. The one thing I did notice, especially here, is I had a lot of difficulty with the stock clone stick and buttons with getting some of Hulk's special moves out. Just because I am just so used to the Sanwa stick and buttons that it really shows that I'm definitely gonna have to mod it. No, most of the time I'm okay with the clone stick and buttons for the most part, but for this game in general, and I think it just overall, it'll be a better experience to actually mod it. Again, this is the only repeat as far as for this official cabinet, and you know it's okay. I am glad they included it just because it does have the Wi-Fi enabled play. Though of course this is the older title, not a lot of folks are actually playing it. Alright, and now we come to the online portion. As I mentioned at the top of this overview of the video, this is actually online enabled title, much like NBA Jam, and Code Mystics did a wonderful job, at least for the games that I was able to participate in online and also spectate. The videos you're seeing are actually spectating videos, just because honestly, these folks are a lot better than I am. They've played the game a lot more, and at least remember how to play. I, of course, scrubbed out and lost definitely a lot of my matches. As you can see, the connection, since it is peer-to-peer, or it seems to be peer-to-peer, since there's not really enough server, you can choose from, of course, each game. You can go to local or online. Once you do go online, you can select from either a Danger Room Lobby 1 or Lobby 2. These are the matches that I was spectating, and it was very smooth. None of the matches that I spectated had any lag. Some of the matches that I actually, when I was playing, did have some connection errors as far as some lag and loading. But as far as playing the game, it didn't hiccup too much. But that was because of my opponent's connection. Once I was able to find an opponent with really good connections, again, it was fairly lag-free. So this is pretty impressive. This is how the rest of their titles are going to be as far as the netcode. At least at the intro here. Hopefully maybe they'll keep smoothing it out, but I do look forward to it, especially if they do release other titles, especially once they go to possibly, I don't know, the Street Fighter Alpha Trilogy or the Street Fighter 3 trilogy. I would love to see those online enabled. And eventually, of course, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Hopefully, they'll be able to also get Capcom vs. SNK, Capcom vs. SNK 2, and Marvel vs. Capcom 2 all in one cab. That would be probably one of my ultimate wants. Alright, overall, I would give this arcade cabinet an 8 out of 10 if it didn't have Wi-Fi. With the Wi-Fi enabled play for the 4 versus fighting games, I would say easily a 9 out of 10. Code Mystics did a wonderful job with the net play. I look forward to their further updates with the firmware to make it even smoother. Actual arcade itself is very well built, excellent finals. Arcade 1-Up has it nailed down. It was easy to build, put together. My only gripe was I was not a fan of the Marvel Superheroes SNES game that was included. It was honestly, I think, just a throwaway. I would have preferred it wasn't included, and if you picked up the XMen vs. Street Fighter cabinet, you would have gotten the Punisher, which I already had with the Marvel Superheroes cabinet that they originally released. Overall, I am looking forward to Arcade 1-Up's future versus titles or fighting game titles, especially if they are Wi-Fi enabled as well. I would love to see a Street Fighter trilogy online enabled, Street Fighter 3 online trilogy online enabled as well, and I would love it once they do upgrade their arcade PCB board, their emulator board, to support 3D. I would love to see Versus Online with Capcom vs. SNK, Capcom vs. SNK 2, and Marvel vs. Capcom 2 as a cabinet. That probably won't happen, but I would have loved to see all those 3 games comboed into one. Again, thanks for watching. I really appreciate everybody watching this video. Please like and subscribe.